Some secrets are like heavy anchors, meant to keep us grounded, but they can just as easily sink the ship. I thought I was protecting my daughter from the dangers of entitlement. I thought I was teaching her the value of $1 by living like I didn't have one. Instead, I was creating a divide so deep it threatened to swallow us both. My name is Richard, and this is the story of how a secret nearly cost me the most important person in my life. For 20 years, I lived a life of deliberate modesty. I drove a 10-year-old sedan with a dent in the door and wore clothes that were more functional than fashionable. I shopped at discount stores, carefully clipping coupons and planning meals to maximize every dollar. My ex-wife, Alina, and our daughter, Natasha, believed I was financially struggling, a man barely making ends meet on an average salary. What they didn't know was that I was a millionaire, the quiet benefactor of a software patent I'd sold decades ago. The royalties from that patent had been accumulating in accounts far from prying eyes, a secret fortune I guarded fiercely. I did it all for Natasha. I wanted her to learn the hard-earned lessons of life, to understand that worth isn't measured in material possessions. I wanted her to be humble, grateful, and resilient, not another spoiled child of fortune. Looking back, maybe I was naive. Maybe I mistook a lesson for a lie. The trouble began 2 years after my divorce from Alina. She filed for full custody of Natasha, who was now 17. Alina had spent the better part of those 2 years poisoning Natasha against me, filling her head with stories of how I was holding her back, how my frugality was a sign of failure. The custody hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. Alina arrived with her new boyfriend in a luxury car, dressed in clothes that screamed of a life I was actively hiding. Natasha sat beside her, her face a mask of teenage resentment. The first part of the hearing was a predictable assault on my character. Alina's lawyer painted me as a man teetering on the edge of financial ruin. They presented photos of my small apartment, my old car, and my carefully budgeted life. They made it sound like I was a burden to my own child. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to articulate the values I held so dear. I talked about financial responsibility, about living within your means, and about how true wealth wasn't about money, but about character. That's when Natasha's anger broke through. She stood up, her voice raw with frustration, and the words she spoke landed like physical blows. "You're not teaching me values," she cried. "You're embarrassing me. My friends' parents think you're a loser. You drive that piece of junk car, and you live in that tiny apartment, and you never buy me anything nice. You're broke, and you're pathetic, and I'm tired of pretending it's okay." The courtroom fell silent. The judge looked stunned. Alina's lawyer was fighting a grin, and I felt a part of me break. But Natasha wasn't done. She went on to accuse me of being cheap and selfish, of making her lie to her friends about our simple life. She told the judge she didn't want to live with a failure who couldn't give her the life she deserved. Every word was a dagger, twisting deeper with the knowledge of my carefully guarded secret. I looked at Natasha, my daughter, my whole world, and I saw a stranger. I saw her shame and her anger, and in that moment, I knew the secret I had held for so long had become a barrier between us, not a shield for her. In a flash of clarity, I made a decision that would change everything. I stood up, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Your Honor," I said, "I have some additional financial documentation I'd like to submit." Alina's lawyer scoffed. "We've already reviewed his financials, his tax returns, his bank statements." "Not all of them," I interrupted quietly. I walked to the judge's bench and handed him a sealed envelope I had brought with me, a desperate what-if, a last-ditch effort if things went terribly wrong. I had hoped I wouldn't need it. The judge opened the envelope and began to read. His eyes widened, his gaze darting from the documents to me, a look of disbelief on his face. He set the papers down and looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice a low rumble, "are these documents authentic?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "Verified by my accountant and attorney this morning." He looked down at the papers again, then back at me. "And you're saying your actual net worth is just over $52 million? A hushed gasp filled the courtroom. Natasha's face, which had been contorted with rage, went from confused to completely pale. Alina's mouth hung open, and her lawyer looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "That is correct, Your Honor," I said. "I've been living modestly by choice, not necessity. I wanted my daughter to understand the value of hard work and financial responsibility before she knew about the family's wealth." The judge looked at Natasha. "Young lady, did you know about your father's financial situation?" Natasha could only shake her head, tears now streaming down her face, not from anger, but from a profound mix of shame and regret. She finally understood the full weight of her words. The rest of the hearing was a blur. The judge dismissed Alina's petition and, in a shocking turn, actually increased my custodial time, stating that a parent who prioritized character over comfort was exactly the kind of influence a teenager needed. But the victory felt hollow. The legal battle was over, but the war for my daughter's heart was just beginning. After court, Natasha approached me in the hallway. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red, and she couldn't meet my gaze. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "You thought I was just cheap and pathetic," I finished for her, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. She flinched. "Mom has been telling me things. I believed them. I thought you didn't care about giving me a good life." I sighed, feeling the weight of the past 2 decades on my shoulders. "I do care about giving you a good life, Natasha. But I define good life differently than your mother does. I thought character mattered more than comfort. Values mattered more than valuables." "But you could have told me," she said, her voice cracking. "You could have explained." I looked at her, and my heart ached. "Could I? Look at what happened the moment you found out. You're not upset that I lied. You're upset that you called me names when I was secretly rich. What does that tell you about your priorities?" She was quiet for a long moment, the truth of my words hanging in the air between us. "It tells me," she finally said, her voice soft with dawning realization, "you were right to worry." We stood there for what felt like hours, 2 strangers who had once been a family. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said, "we figure out if we can rebuild this on a foundation of honesty instead of lies. But that means you need to decide who you want to be. Someone who values money above everything else, or someone who understands that the best things in life can't be bought." It's been a few weeks since that day. Natasha has been staying with me more often, and we've been having long, difficult conversations. She started volunteering at a local food bank, trying to understand what real hardship looks like. She's also been asking me questions about my business, about investing, and about building wealth responsibly. The other night, she surprised me with a question that filled me with a hope I hadn't felt in years. "Dad," she asked, looking me in the eye for the first time in a long time, "when I turn 18, will you teach me how to manage money like you do? Not just the having it part, but the respecting it part." Maybe I didn't fail completely after all. The secret nearly destroyed us, but the truth, as painful as it was, might be what saves us. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that hurt the most, and sometimes revealing your deepest vulnerability is the only way to build a relationship that's truly indestructible. I'm not sure if we'll ever have the relationship we had before, but I'm hopeful that the one we're building now, based on honesty and mutual respect, might be even stronger. After all, the most valuable things in life aren't the ones you can put in a bank account. They're the ones you carry in your heart, and those are worth more than any sum of money.